Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. President Biden did his first address in front of a joint session of Congress. Now there weren't a lot of people there because of the pandemic. It was a fairly empty room that the president spoke to live, but he was seen by millions of our fellow Americans and early reviews are already starting to come in. Let me know if you saw the president's address in front of a joint session of Congress. I'm here to give you some of the reactions that emerged as a result of the president's joint address. My name is Dr. Nitin Choda with Ignition Time. This right here is a little bit of information about me. Take a minute of your time to check out my video. You'll learn more about who I am, what my journey has been like, and why you should listen to me. Let's just jump right into the new trend in our country where more and more Americans are becoming anti-Wall Street and pro-business. In other words, more and more Americans are becoming pro-Main Street, trying to help small businesses, and becoming anti-Wall Street, against the wealthy, against the top 1%. Let's just jump right into this important episode of Ignition Time. Let's start with a very important segment from Frank Luntz, who's a pollster, who's actually a Republican pollster and a political strategist, and he actually correctly called the results of the presidential election. And he said that he feared that President Trump was going to run into some trouble. So this is someone that I think we should all pay attention to, Frank Luntz, the pollster. So Frank joined CNBC and he was talking about his reaction to the president's first address to Congress, and President Biden discussed several of his economic proposals. Frank Luntz pointed out some important things. He said that this was a class-oriented speech, and he said the public hates fraud, abuse, and corruption. And he said that's not something the president really talked about. And he said the public is hostile to Wall Street and the top 1%. And he pointed out some really important things, some really important takeaways from the president's speech. Let's roll the tape and hear from Frank Luntz.
In President Biden's address to Congress last evening, he also had a message to Wall Street.
The American Jobs Plan is a blue-collar blueprint to build America. That's what it is. And it recognizes something I've always said in this chamber and the other. Good guys and women on Wall Street, but Wall Street didn't build this country. The middle class built the country, and unions built the middle class.
Joining us right now to discuss this and other key moments of Biden's speech is political strategist and pollster Frank Luntz. Frank, it's great to see you this morning. We just showed one of many clips, and I'd love to hear your perspective, but more importantly, what you think the American public thinks about what they heard last evening.
I was watching it with a group of 15 students from across the country from USC, University of Southern California, and they personalized it. They thought the language was okay, and they've been studying the words. And for the first time on Squawk Box, I want to focus on the policies rather than the words, because the language was pedestrian. It was okay, wasn't great, wasn't horrible. Nothing that he said was particularly memorable, but he emphasized again and again jobs. That's the word that we heard again, jobs, jobs. 60% of Americans would rather have a career, only 35% would rather have a job. So that tells you where it's targeted. He also talked about blue collar, which is one aspect of the middle class. This is the most class-oriented speech that I've heard in a long time. It does harken back to Barack Obama 10 years ago. And there's very much in this speech that indicates that the era of big government is back. And even though we discuss how he articulates it, if you started to tally up the amount of money that's being spent, it is significant. And in the end, the public hates more than anything else. Not the tax increases. I want to be very clear about this. It's not the tax increases that the public hates. It's the waste, the fraud, the abuse, and in some cases, the corruption that comes when you spend this much money with this little accountability, transparency, and oversight. And those are the three words that I did not hear much of last night. Accountability, transparency, and oversight. I think that should have Wall Street a little bit nervous this morning.
What was the perception of the line that we even just showed before around Wall Street? Wall Street didn't build it. Does that play well, do you think, broadly speaking?
Yes, it does, because the public is hostile to Wall Street. The public is hostile to the top 1%. They've been taught over the last 20 years that the top 1% didn't get it in a legitimate way. They've been taught that the economy is rigged and that the people at the top have an advantage. And so Wall Street looks at this. And by the way, anytime you explain it as Wall Street, that in itself, that phrase turns off tens of millions of Americans that are much more supportive of Main Street. And right now, in April of 2021, the public has probably never been in my lifetime as pro small business as they are right now, but as anti-Wall Street as they are right now.
Now, the former White House press secretary and the co-host of Outnumbered on Fox, Kayleigh McEnany, was joined by Stephen Miller, who was a former White House senior advisor. And as you can imagine, Miller wasn't very happy with President Biden's speech. In fact, he said Biden's speech was like watching paint dry on the side of an old house. Yep, that's what he said. He also said President Biden does not have former President Trump's charisma, and he said, don't be fooled by the lifeless, insufferable language because the Democrats have a left-wing agenda. Wow. Folks, I want our viewers and subscribers to be aware of both sides, which is why I think we should be aware of what everyone is saying. Let's roll the tape and hear from the one and only, the rather interesting character, Stephen Miller. Let's watch.
Well, there's no doubt that his writers copied a few of President Trump's lines, but I'll tell you what Joe Biden can't copy: President Trump's charisma. Boy, that was a dull, lifeless, boring speech. My Lord. I don't think I've ever in my life
I hate to say
seen
it, but it's like he's a corpse. I mean, you can't, it's unwatchable.
Right. I have never seen such extreme ideas married to such a completely dry text. I mean, just from a pure writing standpoint, this wasn't a speech, Sean. This was a laundry list. Like a series of bullet points read in order. Nothing stitching it together. No big idea. I mean, compare that to a year ago in President Trump's speech with all of the excitement and the enthusiasm and the energy, the patriotism, the optimism. This speech was literally like watching paint dry on the side of an old house.
I mean this, and then you watch the I call it the Biden shuffle. It's like the little baby steps that he takes as he walks, and the little elbows. Looks like it's an effort. There doesn't seem to be a vitality in how he approaches this, and it's the hardest job in the world, Kayleigh. This is not for somebody that doesn't have a high energy level.
Sure. He ended his speech by saying, "Thank you for your patience." Hardly the way you want to end your first address to Congress. Yes. Look, my friend and former colleague, Stephen Miller, I got to say, that last State of the Union by President Trump was one of the most well-written State of the Unions, well-delivered State of the Unions I've ever heard. It's about the American people, and to watch American heroes stand up all across that room as President Trump acknowledged them, inspiring our country to come together in unity. It was a beautiful speech, and you just got none of that tonight. Well done, Stephen Miller. He needs you as a speechwriter.
Last 15 seconds, Steve Miller. America's at a crossroads. 2022 is everything, Stephen.
Don't be fooled by the boring, lifeless, insufferable language. Look at the ideas behind it. You saw an agenda for open borders, defunding police, and the largest big government spending binge in U.S. history.
Now, Stephen Miller is not the only guy who's unhappy. Lindsey Graham, the one and only Republican senator from South Carolina, said that President Biden introduced the largest power grab in American history, and he embraced socialism. Wow. Pretty interesting comments. I don't know how Lindsey Graham came to that conclusion, but nothing that Lindsey Graham says surprises me. Let's roll the tape and hear from the one and only Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, the Republican. Let's watch.
So everything now has a different meaning than when we were used to. Infrastructure means childcare. Infrastructure means redistribution. Infrastructure is the Green New Deal, everything. All right, so you got $2 trillion emergency COVID relief that was anything but emergency COVID relief. And you got this new, $4 trillion plus that they're going to spend on all these other radical policies. I don't know. I don't think you need a degree from MIT or Harvard to figure out that those numbers don't add up. And Joe Biden said he's going to be able to do it without creating a deficit. Senator, I got an iPhone like everybody else. It has a calculator on it. I can do the simple math. And pretty much if we confiscated the wealth of every rich person, which we're getting pretty close to, we still wouldn't balance the budget, would we?
No, I mean, what Joe Biden did tonight was introduce the largest power grab in American history as president of the United States, even more than FDR.
He didn't talk about court packing. He didn't talk about ending the legislative filibuster. He didn't talk about D.C. statehood. He didn't talk about what's really radically going on in terms of the power grab. Even though he said during the campaign, he supported none of these things. I saw a weak Joe Biden tonight, a dull Joe Biden, not the guy that you knew years ago.
Yeah, really. I saw a socialist tonight. I saw a man who embraced socialism. What did he tell us? To save American families, we're going to grow the government. The bottom line is infrastructure now is about climate change. It's not about roads and bridges. And he talked about Russia and China in terms that were really unnerving to me. Do you think, after listening to Joe Biden tonight, that anybody at the Kremlin is worried? Do you think the Chinese have any fear in them after hearing this speech tonight? It was incoherent on foreign policy. He talked about leaving Afghanistan as if there's no consequence to leaving. He turned down sound military advice. This is the same Joe Biden that allowed ISIS to come back by leaving Iraq. You just wait and see what happens. The bottom line tonight, that if I ever hear that Joe Biden's a moderate again, I'm going to throw up. Because after tonight, he embraced socialism. He made Barack Obama look like Ronald Reagan. But here's the good news. There's a better way, and Tim Scott embodies that way. Tim Scott did not only himself proud tonight, but he did conservatism proud. And let's help Tim Scott.
And there's one more Republican who's actually unhappy that President Biden has not tweeted anything significant. Don't ask me why he actually said that. This is the one and only Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican from Texas. He said Biden's speech was boring but radical. And he said the president has tried to tweet nothing notable while in office. So I guess tweeting notable things while in office is a standard for Cancun Cruz. Let me know whether you agree or disagree with what Cancun Cruz says. Let's roll the tape and hear from Cruz. Let's watch.
Boring but radical. The speech by design was calm and dulcet tones. I challenge you to remember a single line from the speech. I mean, it was monotone. The chamber was nearly empty, and that really has characterized the first 100 days of Joe Biden. That he's tried to say nothing notable, he's tried to tweet nothing notable.
That's it, everybody. The reaction to the president's first address in front of a joint session of Congress. Let me know whether you agree or disagree with the fact that more and more of our fellow Americans are now pro-small business and anti-Wall Street, against the top 1%, and whether the Republicans' concerns about a socialist agenda, about a dangerous new trend in our country are legitimate or not. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.